Okay, so today's topic on soil, we're going to talk about maintaining the soil, and we're also going to talk about some issues that can happen with soil. So the first one we're going to talk about is salinization, which is salty soil. So basically, if there's high levels of salt in the soil, it's going to have the same effect as dry conditions. So the soil becomes less able to grow crops. So there are two factors that can lead to salinization of soil. So number one is if there's too little vegetation. So when farmers cultivate land, they are totally removing all of the vegetation. So there's nothing left but soil. So therefore, water enters the soil, and since there's no plants to absorb the water, it can lead to salty soil. There's too many solutes left in the soil. Another factor that can lead to salinization is there's too much water. So, for example, excess irrigation. So those systems of sprinklers and so on that farmers use and to water their crops. So what that irrigation does, it brings even more water into the soil, and it's adding it to the groundwater. The excess groundwater will dissolve the minerals like the salt from the soil. And eventually, when water evaporates, the salts are left behind and we're left with salty soil. So some solutions to avoid salinization or salty soil is to, one, you can replant the areas so that plants are there, the roots are there, they're going to use up the water that falls before it has a chance to seep away. Farmers, they should also be monitoring irrigation. They should also line those water canals that they have to prevent canal water from draining into the groundwater. Here in this diagram, we can see salty soil. So all this white stuff that's being left here, though that is salt. So here in this diagram, groundwater flows from higher elevations to lower elevations, carrying the salt along with it. And then we have here evaporation happening, and what's left behind is all of the salt, okay, leading to salinization. All right, next is organic matter and erosion. So the most serious problem in soils is the loss of organic matter. So like I was talking about cultivating, too much cultivating can lead to soil erosion. So summer fallow, this is a practice of cultivating land to control weeds, but not planting any crops. All right, it's a way to control weeds. So therefore there's no weeds left, but there's no crops left either. So soil is exposed to sunlight and higher temperatures. Bacteria will start decomposing the organic matter at a rapid rate, and then the soil is then less able to hold on to nutrients, water, and air, which will eventually make the soil poor for growing plants. All right, so in this diagram here, we can see soil erosion and overexposure. Soil organic matter is lost, soil becomes compacted, surface crust forms, then more soil organic matter is lost, and then crop yields are reduced. All right, there is a video here. Let's pause here and watch that. All right, so like that video was showing, organic matter is very important because it has a lot of nutrients that the plants need to grow. So saving the soil. One method of saving the soil, especially if there's soil erosion, it can be solved by planting a cover of vegetation on the surface of the ground. That will slow the flow of water. It gives the soil more time to absorb the water, and then when more water soaks in, less will flow along the surface and cause erosion. So because the plants are there, the roots are there, they'll take up the water and nutrients. The vegetation, having vegetation there will also cover the soil and therefore protect the soil from wind. Seed drills are used instead of cultivating land. These seed drills are machines that will push the seed right through the stubble of the previous crop. And that process is called zero tillage. Okay, the disadvantage of doing this is weeds and disease-causing organisms that were previously killed by cultivation. They're going to be controlled by other methods like using pesticides. All right, so the advantage of cultivation was it was getting rid of weeds. It was also getting rid of any disease-causing organisms. Another method is shelter belts. This can save the soil. This method, it uses a row of trees that are planted along the edge of a field to protect the crops. It reduces wind and damage to crops. It'll trap snow to increase soil moisture and provide wildlife with habitat as well. So I do have some diagrams here of shelter belts. So you can see this row here of trees and such, as well as here. So it's there to protect the farmland from wind and snow and so on. Modified waterways, so reshaped and seeded waterways to reduce erosion. And then, of course, crop rotation, which is planting different crops on the same land to improve soil health. All right, so saving the soil in forests. So when trees are cut and removed from an area, wind and water can also erode the soil in forest areas too. So what's done now is some trees, stumps, and logs and debris, they're left on the cut areas. So then as the debris decays, it's going to add organic material to the soil. Forests are replanted with new trees shortly after they are harvested. And then trees and shrubs are left around streams and gullies to also minimize soil loss. All right, and then lastly, we're just going to talk about hydroponic technology. And like that previous video we watched, it's how we can grow plants without soil. So basically, plants are supplied with nutrient-rich solutions, oxygen, and water. The disadvantage to hydroponic technology is the setup and maintenance of all this equipment is very expensive, so there's a high cost to it. All right, so we will watch this video on hydroponics, but here I wanted to show another method, which is called aquaponics. So what you can see here is we have plants up at the top, and then we have this aquarium with fish at the bottom. So what's happening in aquaponics is it's combining raising fish and growing plants in an aquaculture system. So the water used by the fish is providing nutrients for the plants. So plants, they remove the nutrients. They're also cleaning up the water at the same time. Then this water goes back to the fish. So it's a source of fish and plants for food. All right, so let's take a look at this video here.